and I think when you start to try and take a step back and look at where the available talent pools are, and also embrace, and I think this is something that the lens of IR35 has drawn focus onto organisations about how they use non-permanent labour, that the outcome that they need doesn't necessarily lead to the fact that they need to make a permanent hire, that there are ways in which they can deliver the outcome that they require without having to increase the number of employees that they have. And it's a shift in mindset and strategy to start to think about what it is that we want to achieve, and then look at all of the ways in which we could achieve that by blending all of the channels that are available to us. I think when you're and this is true, when you're in the moment, you're just dealing with a massive in tray, and you're just dealing with all of the shouting that we've got loads of orders, and we need to try and find a way of filling them. Let's go to the way in which we filled them before, rather than thinking about all of the different ways in which you that might be possible out there to fill them. So there's an education and a change mindset that I think everybody's having to go through quite rapidly at the moment, to think about ways in which they can achieve those things.
Yeah. Do you think it's flowing up as well as down, in the sense that some clients are being educated and driving this through their recruitment partners, but in some cases the forward-thinking recruitment partners are driving this agenda, where they're saying, look, there are other things we can do. We can help you on a wider basis. You may have us slotted in here, but we can actually do these other things for you and address this broadly
as well. And the example that's been in the news very much in the last half of 2020 was the HGV driver shortage, and the solutions that had to be put in place quite rapidly to try and solve that. None of them were short-term fixes. There was a fundamental challenge in training enough individuals, and a timeline that would be required to train those individuals. I think everybody would agree that we want HGV drivers trained properly. But when you listened to the causes of that squeeze in HGV drivers, it dates back years. It dates back to the conditions, the pay obviously, but the conditions that HGV drivers have to put up with, what they're expected to do. It's just not an attractive thing to do. And when you've got a tight labour market, just from a macro metric level, there are physically a fixed number of people to do all the jobs there are in the UK. You have to have some long-term thinking around it, and that meant that government had to get involved. That meant that training organisations had to get involved. That meant that third-party recruiters had to get involved in the solution. And certainly, when you talk about the global recruitment companies, their strategies are holistic around nurturing of talent all the way through the required skill shortages and sectors to be able to fulfill the needs that are coming down the line. But there's some it's not a simple answer. It does take people to take a step back and understand how they're going to go about doing it. And the supermarkets, for example, we've all been to a supermarket in the last 6 months, seen the pictures up there about becoming an HGV driver. They've had to pay more money. They've had to increase the wages, but they also, if you notice the small print, are offering training bursaries. They're offering all sorts of different incentives to try and attract talent into that ecosystem. So, and you could say that, you could use, that's just an example, but I think it does need that change mindset, and it does need that stepping back for an organisation, for an end client organisation, to try and think strategically about what their needs are going to be, and the different ways in which they can fulfil those needs, both in the short term but also in the medium and long term.
I think there are some things around, again, the lens of IR35 and the talk of, okay, consider, jumping ahead to what we might come on to, but the government said there's a kind of a soft landing now for IR35, wasn't there, for the first 12 months or so. So organisations who made very quick decisions at sort of 2020, Christmas 2020, to say, right, we're banning off payroll workers, there won't be any. You know, are they now successfully delivering what they need to deliver, so the best part of 16 months on or 15 months on? Or are they now thinking, actually, we need to flip back because we're just not being able to achieve what we need to achieve now that there's a burst in demand and burst in capacity, and that means we need to reconsider how, you know, what a flexible workforce looks like. And I think it's going to be interesting to see whether post sort of April, as things do start to get maybe a bit more serious around HMRC looking at IR35 within organisations and how it's been implemented, as to whether there's a further tightening of those opportunities that sit within an outside determination. Organisations do get far more nervous about doing it, and then that puts an even more, going back to Tim's point, that, you know, you've got to have a blended approach to thinking about outcomes. It's got to be an outcome conversation. And I think you're right, Johnny. I think there is some, as I said at the outset, we've got organisations who are going proactively to customers to say, you need to change the way you're doing it, but then also customers coming to the organisations themselves and saying, you need to help us do recruitment better. We're making an absolute rickets of it.